I used to think love was mostly logistics. Not flowers and fireworks, not grand speeches, just the daily, ordinary choices you make that say, I'm here. My choices were small. I took her car for inspections before the sticker expired. I kept spare batteries for the remote she always misplaced. I knew which light bulbs went over the stove and which plant liked the south window. Love, to me, looked like a stocked fridge and a charged phone. That's the kind of man I am. Practical, predictable, present. We met in a loud bar and stayed for the conversation. She laughed at my dry jokes, those little one-liners that don't land unless someone is listening for them. She listened. The first year, she'd tuck her feet under my thigh on the couch, as if she needed an anchor and I was it. She was heat and color. I was ballast. It worked. We had a place. A small Italian restaurant tucked between a locksmith and a barber shop. It wasn't fancy, red napkins, chalkboard menu, soft music that sounded like rain. Our table was the one by the window where the steam fogged the glass in winter. It was hours after the second time we sat there, because the owner, Marco, saw us the way people like him see couples, through patterns. He noticed the way she always ordered a second glass of Sangiovese, and I always pretended I didn't want dessert, then ate half of hers. He noticed that I looked at her while she spoke, and she touched my wrist when she laughed. People who run small restaurants notice these things. Traditions are their currency. I kept traditions like someone guarding a fire. Even as the air cooled, I kept feeding it, because I thought that's what love asked of you. Keep the flame steady while life throws wind in every direction. But then the wind never stopped. It was gradual, like everyone says. She started coming home later from client dinners that didn't have receipts, from team drinks that ended with perfume I didn't recognize clinging to her hair. The first few times, I asked about it lightly. Late night, I'd say, making sure my voice held no edge. She'd nod, kiss the air near my cheek, and disappear into the shower. I excused a lot under the umbrella of stress. She was ambitious, and I admired that. I told myself she was building something important, and important things require time, energy, the kind of attention that makes everything else blur at the edges. I could be the steady background while she chased the foreground. I didn't mind. But it's one thing to be background because life is loud. It's another to be background because you've been muted. It showed up in small humiliations. The way she stood at the door scrolling while I put on my shoes, like I was already late, and she was waiting on me when I'd been ready for 10 minutes. The way she corrected me in front of others on details that didn't matter. It wasn't 8 months, it was 9. The way her MH replaced thank you. The way her body turned into negative space on the couch, a silhouette facing the opposite direction. I got quieter, not sulking, just editing. I trimmed the conversations that used to stretch into the night. I stopped bringing up plans she forgot to mark on the calendar. I learned new routes home that didn't pass by the places we used to go, because nostalgia is a prankster. It throws old laughter at you from new corners. Through all of it, I kept our table. Once a month, no matter how the month had gone, I'd text Marco and he'd reply with a thumbs up and a time. I'd put on a jacket and she'd step out of the bedroom done up with that effortless precision of hers. Hair pinned, lips soft, earrings that caught the light. For 2 hours we'd act like we were still the couple in Marco's story, the one where the man pretends he doesn't want dessert and the woman touches his wrist. We stopped touching. That's the part nobody wants to admit out loud, because it sounds small until you live it. In the morning I'd lean in and her kiss would miss, landing on air next to my mouth. In bed, when I turned toward her, the space between our bodies felt like a locked room I no longer had the key to. I asked once, gently, if everything was okay. She said, I'm just tired, but tired doesn't lock doors, it just dims lights. Something else had gone dark. I didn't panic. I don't do scenes. I don't do pleading. You can't argue someone into wanting you, and I refused to audition in my own house. So I kept doing what I knew, the logistics of love. I made the dentist appointments. I changed the oil. I replaced the cracked phone case she never got around to. I saved our table. On our 6th anniversary, I booked it 2 weeks in advance. The text confirmation felt like a small victory, like proof there were still rituals worth keeping. I brought home flowers, simple ones, white lilies, because once she'd said they made the apartment smell clean, and I placed them in the tall glass vase by the window. She walked past them twice and didn't comment. That was new. The woman I met used to narrate beauty out loud, as if naming it made it real. Now beauty could thunder in the room, and she wouldn't lift her head. The day arrived gray and wet. Rain made the city smell like keys, metallic, a little sharp. I sent her a reminder mid-afternoon, 7 p.m. Marcos. She read it. No reply. I got there at 6:50 and sat by the window, watching the drops gather and run. Marco brought bread, olive oil, a glass of red I didn't ask for. On the house, he said. Happy anniversary. He was trying to help, the way people try to straighten a picture on the wall even when the house itself is sinking. 7:10. I called. No answer. 7:18. A text, running late. Start without me. I put my phone face down and looked around. A couple at the next table was sharing a plate. Their forks tapped the same rhythm. I used to know that rhythm. You can tell a lot about two people by the way their forks move, if they speed up together or if one lags behind, waiting, pretending not to. At 7:34, another text. Where are you sitting? I looked at the window, the fogged glass, the red napkins. I typed, our table. The bubbles appeared, then vanished, then returned. Make it for one, she wrote. Don't wait up. My face didn't change. The room didn't tilt. Nothing dramatic. Just a quiet subtraction, the kind that doesn't look like much until you try to lift what's left and realize how light it is. I ate alone. Slowly. Not because I was savoring anything, but because I needed to give myself something I could finish. The sea base flaked apart like paper. The lemon slices were too thin. I asked for dessert, tiramisu. I ate every bite and left the fork clean, as if appetite could double as proof of life. On my way out, Marco clapped my shoulder. Next time, he said. I nodded. Maybe. At home, the apartment smelled like rain on tile. Her shoes weren't by the door. The vase of lilies leaned slightly, as if even flowers lose their posture when nobody praises them. I took off my jacket, hung it with more care than it deserved, and stood in the kitchen without moving. The refrigerator motor hummed. The clock ticked. There are sounds in a home that aren't loud until you're the only one hearing them. I slept on my side, facing the cold side of the bed. I don't count sheep. I count steps. The ones I've taken towards someone who isn't moving and the ones I could take away if I stopped pretending the floor would crumble. I didn't sleep much. At dawn, I got up and went for a walk. The city was still wet. The awnings dripped in patient intervals, long thin strings of water that made me think of beaded curtains in old diners. I walked without choosing streets, the way you can let grief steer if you keep the pace slow enough. I passed a dog that looked like it had permanent eyebrows. It gave me a look of mutual respect. I stopped at the hardware store because you can always find a reason to go in. I bought sandpaper I didn't need and a box of screws I'd forget in a drawer. Back home, I showered, shaved, and made coffee for one. I sat at the table and realized something I didn't want to say out loud. I had become a caretaker for a house that didn't hold her anymore. I could keep tending to it, and to the systems of our life, but the machine was humming only because I refused to unplug it. That afternoon, I went through drawers. Not snooping. Sorting. I put my documents in one folder, hers in another. I backed up my photos to a drive I named with a date instead of a word. I restored my old number that only my family had. I canceled a streaming service I paid for because she liked the shows where everyone screamed at each other about white couches and friendships that lasted 3 episodes. I returned the borrowed ladder to the neighbor I barely knew but always waved at. Logistics, again. Movement with purpose. Movement that doesn't require permission. A week passed like a careful sentence. Subjects, verbs, no exclamation points. She was courteous. Ask anything conversations, not say anything once. She came home at predictable times, which is not the same as early. She left a lipstick print on a coffee mug that wasn't mine and rinsed it before I saw. I noticed anyway. There's a way people clean up their tracks that creates more tracks if you know how to read them. I stopped asking where she was going. Not out of pique. Because the question itself felt undignified now. A job interview for a position already filled by someone else. Instead, I got interested in the parts of my life I'd let sit in the garage collecting dust. I found my old sketchbook from before I forgot I liked to draw. I went to the gym at weird hours and learned that 9 p.m. is full of people who hate mornings and 6 a.m. is full of people who hate themselves. I preferred the 9 p.m. crowd. They said, hey, and meant it. 2 Fridays later, she mentioned she had a work retreat upstate. The phrase sounded like a costume. Work doesn't retreat, It advances with coffee and deadlines. I nodded. Drive safe. She said she'd be back Sunday night. I said I'd probably be at Marco's, because old habits die last. She said, again, and I said, maybe not. I didn't book a table that weekend. I built a shelf in the hallway instead. It came out straight on the first try, and I stood there longer than necessary, admiring the kind of progress that doesn't argue back. Sunday afternoon, she texted, ETA 6:30. The sun laid itself down along the windowsill like a sleeping cat. At 7:10, she still wasn't home. I put water on for pasta, then turned it off when the boil became impatient. At 7:42, I picked up my jacket. Not to wait at the edge of anything. To move. It was muscle memory that carried me to the restaurant. I didn't text ahead. If our table was taken, I'd sit anywhere. If anywhere was taken, I'd walk around the block and decide I was hungry for something else. The bell above the door gave that soft hum sound I always liked. Warm air, clink of glassware, a song I didn't know but wanted to. Marco looked up, smiled, and then did something that lodged under my ribs. It wasn't his fault. People who run small places do this. They pull levers they don't know are attached to someone's heart. Ah, he said, already reaching for 2 menus. By the window? Sure, I said. My voice sounded like a code on a hanger. We passed a couple sharing a plate. 2 forks met and clicked. When we reached the window, someone was sitting there. A man. Broad shoulders, navy blazer, wedding ring on the wrong hand for us. I stopped. Marco didn't. He smiled at the man, not me. Ciao, Mark, he said. She's not here yet. The man shook his head, checking his phone. Running late, he said. She said to go ahead and order the salad. Marco turned to me, apologetic now, menus hovering like empty frames. My friend, he said gently. Maybe the bar for a moment? The table is. It's fine, I said, easier than breathing. I took a seat at the bar because sitting felt like something a sane person would do. The bartender set down water and a napkin and waited with the patience of someone who knows when to talk and when not to. I ordered whatever red was open. From the bar, you can see the whole room if you're careful with your eyes. You can look without staring. The man at the window glanced at the door every 30 seconds, then every 20. He adjusted the cutlery like he wanted it to see itself in the spoon. He checked his reflection in the glass and smoothed his hair. He looked like a man about to meet someone who made him nervous in the best and worst ways. I didn't check the door. I checked the mirror behind the bar. Reflections are kind when the truth is not. They give you distance and still show you what you came to see. She arrived at 8:03. Her coat was the same one she wore on the night she told me I was overthinking, that nothing was wrong and that I needed to relax because everything was fine. She wore the small gold hoops I gave her last spring. She moved like steam up a window pane. She walked straight to the table by the window, our table, and kissed him on the cheek the way you kiss someone you haven't earned and already want to keep. A quiet thing happened inside me, like a clasp opening. Not rage. Not the kind of heartbreak that makes you clutch at your chest and gasp like a bad actor. This was release. If you keep holding a picture up to the light, at some point you see the edges where it was cut out of a magazine. I saw the edges. I sipped my wine and let the burn stand in for something I didn't want to name. The bartender followed my gaze by accident, then fixed his eyes on the bottles like he'd made a mistake he wished he could unmake. He opened his mouth and closed it. I spared him. It's okay, I said. I'm just waiting for my check. On the house, he said. From Marco. I shook my head. Tell him, thank you, but let me pay? People should be paid for their work. Logistics again, even here. Marco appeared, a hand on my shoulder in that old, easy way. He glanced toward the window, then toward my face, and the math wrote itself in his eyes. He's a simple man, simple like oak, and he looked like he wanted to move the continent to fix this. I saved him the geology. It's not your job, I said, and he nodded, grateful and ashamed because good men are like that when they are accidentally present for bad moments. Do you want me to? He started, then stopped. No, I said. You don't have to choose. I slid my card onto the check he'd set down without me noticing. I signed slow, neat. My name looked like it belonged to someone practiced at leaving gracefully. On the way out, I didn't look at the table. You don't need eyes for what's already in your bones. I walked in air that felt newly cold. The city was louder than usual, or maybe I was listening differently. I called my friend Eric, the kind of man who keeps a clean spare room and a full toolbox. You home? I asked. Yeah, he said. You good? I said yes, even though we both knew I meant, I will be. At the apartment, I didn't pack everything. I packed the version of my life that could move in one trip. Clothes, documents, the sketchbook, a pair of boots, the watch I wore on days when being on time felt like it mattered. I took the framed photo of my parents from the hallway and left our wedding photo on the shelf where we'd put it because she liked the light there. I wrote a note because I'm not a ghost and I don't want to leave like one. It was short. I waited for you until I understood I was waiting for someone who wasn't coming. I'm not angry. I'm done. Take care of yourself. I left the keys on the counter next to a small pile of screws and the sandpaper I didn't need. I turned off the lights. I closed the door once, the quiet click of something finding the home it was built for. At Eric's, the spare room smelled like detergent and cedar. I slept like I had learned a spell that finally worked. Morning came with sunlight like forgiveness. I made coffee and drank it on the small balcony that looked over a street with a view no one would frame. My phone buzzed long after I decided it would. Messages that started with my name turned into my full name, then into nothing because words run out when people realize they used them wrong for too long. I didn't reply. That wasn't punishment. That was punctuation. People will tell you to confront, to demand answers, to get closure. They'll talk about healing like it's a performance art piece with big gestures and the percussion of plates shattering. I don't believe in that. I believe in clean exits and honest ledgers. I believe in shutting off the water to a house that no longer pipes love through its walls. Weeks went by. Work steadied under my hands like a machine you finally oil in the right places. I went to the gym and stuck with my 9 p.m. crowd. I sketched strangers on trains and gave the bad ones to the trash can and the good ones to the back of a drawer. I didn't go back to Marco's right away. Tradition needs rest after it's been misused. When I did go, months later, the bell made its soft hun sound, and the air smelled like tomatoes and the good olive oil they keep under the bar. Marco looked up and smiled like he'd been holding it for me. Table, he asked. Bar, I said, and we both seemed relieved. I ate alone and liked it. The fork clicked against the plate in a rhythm that belonged only to me. Halfway through my pasta, a woman slipped onto the seat 2 stools down. She was reading a paperback with a cracked spine. She ordered a glass of red. We didn't talk. I didn't perform. We were 2 people at a bar that knows how to keep its promises. The bread warm, the music soft, the lighting kind. That was enough. I used to think love was logistics. I still think that, in part. But I've learned something else. There are some seats you shouldn't keep saving. There are some tables you should leave empty on purpose so the right person can find you standing up, ready to walk somewhere new. The last time I waited for her was the night I watched her take our chair by the window with someone who wasn't me. The first time I chose myself was the hour after, when I signed the check, put down the pen, and stood up without shaking. Not because I am hard or cold, but because I am done holding a place for someone who sat elsewhere by choice. If there's a lesson, it's plain. Stop waiting at doors that aren't opening. You can keep your dignity and your silence and still tell the truth with your feet. And when you finally step away, the world doesn't end. It gets very, very quiet. In that quiet, you hear the only voice you need. It says, go.